Welcome back to the Critics Corner. I'm Andrew Branca, the Waxahachie Sun. I'm here with Mr. David Dunn with Southlake Scholar Magazine, and we are here today to talk about a brand new movie that just came out on Netflix. It's a Western. It's called The Harder They Fall. So why don't you fill that in for our viewers here, David? Tell them what it's about.
Yes, sir. So, as you mentioned, The Harder They Fall is a new Western film to come to Netflix, which is kind of interesting. It's not very common where you see Westerns coming out nowadays. So, kind of an interesting, different kind of a genre film to come our way. The film, as it opens up, tells you that it's based off of fictional events, but real people. So, basically, it tells the story of real life bandits. Rufus Buck, Nat Love, Stagecoach Mary, a lot of those kind of bigger Western names, and them kind of going for, kind of a gang war against each other. Nat Love, who's played by Jonathan Majors, has personal reasons why he's trying to get Rufus Buck, played by Idris Elba. Zazie Beetz is in the mix as Stagecoach Mary. There's other characters in the mix played by Lakeith Stanfield, Regina King, Delroy Lindo. So a pretty stacked cast, a pretty, packed Western movie. And like I said, Andy, Westerns do not come around nowadays. I think the last Western you and I reviewed was Django Unchained last year. And as far as my mind goes, the last Western I remember seeing was The Hateful Eight in 2015. So not very often where Westerns come around, you see a Western come out and you're kind of excited. You're like, oh, that's interesting. What can this offer that you haven't seen in other Western movies? And I gotta say, this movie is actually really boring. This movie was so freaking boring. I was shocked. I've heard so many good things about it. I was gearing up for a very exciting adventure. And I'm gouging my eyes out through the whole thing. Andy, we have that old adage where we're talking about like, oh, I'm in the movie theater. I looked at my watch so many times I lost count. I looked at my phone so many times this movie, Andy. I honestly somewhat wonder if I looked at my phone more than I looked at this movie.
I'll top you that one. I was watching it at home, and like you said, it was slow. It was very boring. And you know how when you get in a comfortable spot on the couch, you just kind of drift off? Well, I drifted off in part of the movie and I had to rewind.
Fell asleep?
I fell asleep during part of the film. And I had to rewind it to the spot where I dozed off, which was about 45 minutes.
Yeah, wow. Well, so first of all, that's hilarious. I wasn't expecting you to say that, but yeah, no, I totally get it. It's such a disinteresting narrative. Let me start with the positives because I feel like we came out of the gate just being very honest about this movie. I'm going to start with the positives. I actually really really like the cast in this movie. Jonathan Majors, who has really been kind of picking up a lot more roles recently. He was recently nominated for Lovecraft Country. He was also in Marvel's newest TV series, Loki. He was really, really great in both those shows. He's really, really great here. And I like seeing him kind of get a little more center attention. It's not very often where you see these up and coming actors kind of land these, big lead roles. But he lands this one and he does it very well. I really don't think there wasn't a role where I didn't like in the movie, Andy. Idris Elba is here. Idris Elba-ing it up. Same thing with Regina King. Same thing with Lakeith Stanfield. Every other movie you've seen them in where they've been great, they do the same things here, and they're great for a lot of the same reasons. Even the characters that I don't really, the actors I don't really recognize, like R.J. Kyler plays a bandit named Jim Beckworth. Daniel Deadweiler plays Cuffy, and Eddie Gathegi plays Bill Pickett. I don't know who any of these actors are. I have never seen them before. And they were really good in the movie. And they actually complimented the other actors quite nicely. So I really, really enjoyed the cast in the movie and the kind of unique revisionist kind of energy they brought to this premise.
Yeah, no, I mean their performances were interesting. I didn't think it was bad. I just think it was just a really boring screenplay that they really couldn't put a whole lot of life into. They worked with what they had. The last couple of Western movies I've seen were, Tom Hanks's News of the World, the remake of 3:10 to Yuma, and True Grit with that was made by Ethan and Joel Cohen, which I personally thought that was really good. Jeff Bridges, Matt Damon, Josh Brolin was in that.
Yeah.
Westerns are supposed to be gritty. They're supposed to be good versus bad. One of my favorite Westerns of all time is probably Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, which is really good, or just some of the older Westerns with John Wayne. Even the original True Grit is actually him as Rooster Cogburn is amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Or The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, another great movie. I believe that was directed by John Ford, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
but this movie, like you said, the screenplay was just really lifeless. There were some parts of the movie where it really roped you in, so to speak. You really grabbed your attention, but those were very brief periods of time filled with dullness, I guess. Just, and nothing against the actors that are in it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't grab your attention and hold to them. That's what a good Western does.
Yeah.
I mean, there's three types of Westerns. There's good guys versus bad guys, where the good guys win, or you have the bad guy that becomes sort of good and he's the anti-hero kind of thing. Or there's the third type of Western where the bad guy just prevails, so to speak. Something happens and everybody suffers or something. And that, to me, that's the three kind of Westerns that are out there. And there wasn't really Idris Elba's character was bad, but I didn't think he was bad enough to really carry the movie. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because so I'll stick with Idris Elba for a second. I think he was good in the movie. Do I think he was like at the level of Gene Hackman in Unforgiven, or Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained, or even the Josh Brolin's character in True Grit? No. Those are villainous characters. They have a really, really good presence. I would say Idris Elba has a good presence here as well. Like, he's literally just a dude you look at. Like, the first frame where he's in the movie, he's just standing there like this bulky dude, like cuffed up. He has a good premise. He gives off a good vibe. But I attribute that more to Idris Elba himself than I do to the character itself. Because when I say Idris Elba is Idris Elbaing up in the movie, he is absolutely doing that. The performance he gives off here is the same performance he gives off in Pacific Rim. He gives off in The Dark Tower. That he gives off in The Suicide Squad. Any movie you've seen Idris Elba in, he's the same way here. Which leads me into the screenplay. This screenplay, I have to agree with everything you said. There are good parts in there for sure. The opener was very strong. The climax was amazing. There was a really good twist that came in that I wasn't expecting. There was a really humorous bit where the bandits had to go rob a white town, and you think white is in like you and me, and then it ends up being that the town is literally white. So I thought that was clever. But no, man, the screenplay is just such a drag to get through. And I think the biggest reason why is because the director, James Samuel, and his co-writer, Bose Yakin, they don't know what to cut out in this movie. They are like, hey, let's send characters here. Let's have them do this. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's do everything we possibly can to drag this thing out as long as we possibly can. Literally, the movie's 2 hours and 15 minutes long. It did not need to be 2 hours and 15 minutes long.
No.
Specifically, there was a few actions, but there was one action in particular in the second act of this movie where a character ventures off. They say they're going to do something to try to help our hero. And you're listening to them talk. You're like, I don't know if it's a good idea. I think that things can go sideways very, very quickly if you do that. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happens. The character gets captured. Everyone else gets inconvenienced because she's captured. She gets tortured. Another person gets captured and tortured and roped into it. They have to go off into a side quest to, go and rescue her. Like, it's just, I'm looking at all this. I'm like, okay, the kickoff action you could have done in the third act that kicked off, the big gunfight everyone always looks out for in those Western movies. You could have spent the movie building up to that moment and just go right into that like an hour in, make it a compact and a pretty tight hour and a half movie. Instead, you get a nearly 2.5 hour movie that is completely unwarranted of the runtime because of stupid decisions the characters make.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And and to me, the one thing that I felt very distracting with this movie, one, you labeled it one, the plot. The plot needs to be very simple. In a Western, good guy, bad guy, kill the bad guy is usually how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And you make that as simple as possible. You don't put in a ton of layers and stuff like that, or have them go chasing rabbits or anything. And they definitely did that a lot in this movie, and that detracted so much away from this. But the other part I really didn't like, it was the score behind this movie. They used a lot of modern music. They used cuts from like Jay-Z, Nina Simone, just to name a few. And I just thought, man, this doesn't feel, it didn't have that Western type feel. And I'm not talking about some guy strumming on a banjo or on a guitar, but they're supposed to be a feeling. And I get what he was trying to do to appeal to a different type of audience or younger audience. And okay, I see what you're going for, but it didn't really work with that. And I will make a comment about the town they went and robbed, the white town. I thought that was pretty funny. It reminded me of Quentin Tarantino a little bit, and what maybe something he would do. I thought, okay, that's kind of funny. I get the joke on that. So.
Yeah, and honestly, that's kind of what I see this movie as. I see it as Quentin Tarantino light. Obviously, that humor is there. The violence is there with all the blood and gore and gratuitous moments. The soundtrack. Quentin Tarantino had hip hop music in Django Unchained. Also had it in The Hateful Eight.
But it worked in Django.
Yeah, well, I think it worked here too. I wasn't that upset by the music choice in this movie, and especially
I wasn't upset with the music. I just didn't think it fit too well. I mean, personally.
Well, okay, so it's a weird thing to look at. So first of all, I think the music is directly because of James Samuel's background, because he is also known as a music producer of The Bullets. So I'm sure that kind of informed some of his musical choice in this movie. I think the musical choices in here worked fine for the revisionist Western hip hop fusion kind of thing it's going for. What I think didn't work was the plot. And that's where the differentiator comes in, because you look at actions characters do in this movie, whether it's someone choosing to do recon alone when they should not be doing recon alone, when it's somebody counting down for a duel, knowing full well that a guy will pull out his gun before you're finished counting down, when two people throw down their guns being like, come on, we'll handle this macho. No, pull out your gun, shoot the sucker, and be done with it. Save us the trouble of this arduous 10-minute sequence. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, have the whole Indiana Jones moment where the guy with the swordsman, where Jones is like, forget this, and he shoots the guy. And I would have loved to have some kind of moment like that. And I mean, I definitely would have forgiven the soundtrack choices a little bit more if the story was more on par, and it had a more of a focus, and it wasn't this long, drawn out thing. Oh my gosh.
Literally. So
it reminded me of that movie with DiCaprio in it where he got the Oscar, which was, oh boy.
So careful there. I actually love The Revenant, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, you're the only one that loves that movie.
That's a lie. He won an Oscar for a reason. But to kind of bring up that point, The Revenant is a much slower movie. It's much more gradual. And it does also take its time to build up. The difference between The Revenant and Harder They Fall, I feel, is that The Revenant understood its story, it understood its character, it understood the moments it needed to build up to, and then it executed it flawlessly. Harder They Fall is so amateurish in every sense of the word. It feels like it's copying from different filmmakers. Like, oh, let's pick up this thing Quentin Tarantino is doing. Let's pick up this thing from John Ford. It's like Clint Eastwood. It's pulling out like all these different elements, and it does not have any idea how to make it seamless.
Well, it can't find its identity. And
literally, it's the identity crisis.
And you compare it to, let's say, the remake of the Magnificent Seven that came out in, I believe, 2016 with Denzel Washington. That had a great focus to it. That had even the original Magnificent Seven was an amazing movie. But there was a focus, there was a defined middle, beginning, and end. And there wasn't any lost moments or lost time where you could literally see the actors on screen in this movie being like, okay, when's the launch here? We'd really like to take a break in my trailer.
You're absolutely right, Andy. And yeah, I loved Magnificent Seven too. I thought that was a very good movie. Again, like you said, very simple, very streamlined, not too over the top, a little cliche, but it had its identity. It knew what it was, and it executed it the way it needed to, and it was fun. This movie, in comparison, is just like, it's completely aimless. It doesn't know where it wants to go. And it's like, hey, let's just do a hip-hop Western movie just because. We don't have to have a plot. We don't need to have, a point or purpose to it. We can just have characters shooting each other. It'll be fine. Fine.
I was waiting for Kanye to show up to interrupt the movie.
I'm going to let you finish, but this movie is bad.
Okay. Well, I think it's come to a point where we need to give a rating for this. We've definitely given our opinion and shared what we thought on The Harder They Fall. I'm going to start first. Out of 10, I give this 4.5.
Okay. That's actually not too far from what I give it. I actually give it a 5. I like the soundtrack. I love the cast. Love seeing Jonathan Majors in the lead. And anything relating to revisionist Western history, I'm always interested to watch. But movies like this, especially Westerns nowadays, really have to justify their existence. And this movie really didn't.
No, not at all. And honestly, it's a film that you can pass.
Very much. It's very middle of the road.
Yeah, very much. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Critic's Corner. So if you have any thoughts, suggestions, anything that you'd like us to review here, give us a shout. Email us, leave a comment section and comment in the section below, or a like, or thumbs up, or email, or whatever. So we will see you guys back here next week at the corner, and you guys take care.
Y'all have a good weekend.